So let's react to the Wales squad, the Ireland squad. They're both out now for the November internationals. They might change a little bit, slim down a little bit, but this is basically the bulk of who they're going to be picking from. Steve Tandy's first squad, so all eyes were on that. I was watching the announcement and his press conference, very interesting stuff there. And I'm going to pick the best 23 as I see it at the moment for both sides, but I'd love to know what yours would be. There is a Scotland one out as well, but Gregor Townsend gets a bit lonely, so he kind of picks everyone. It's a massive squad. I think there's like 27 forwards, so I'll wait for that one to slim down before commenting. But let's get into Wales and Ireland, starting with Wales, because I think it's the most interesting squad. There was most up in the air where he'd go with it. There's a few new names here, of course, and some returning names. The big headline was probably always going to be Lewis Rees-Zammit, who's back in the squad. He was missing for Bristol this weekend, but looks like he's okay. Fantastic news for Wales, an out-and-out world-class finisher. He's bigger, he's stronger, he's quicker. Yes, he's had to get back into rugby union, which is a big thing, and might not be at his best for a while, but you still want to get him straight back in there. He said as much. And then there was the selection around the 10s, and Costello is out, so that's the big news there. And then they've pretty much fudged their rule that's not a rule, if they want it to be a rule, the 25 cap thing, and Rhys Carey is back in, making that loose head look really strong. And let's start there at loose head. Nicky Smith is playing fantastic for Leicester, so that's great news. Then you've got Carey in there. Gareth Thomas is always reliable. You've got a new guy there, Southworth, but no, he may not be used too much. So very, very strong three, especially there. Maybe not so strong at tight head. I do have a lot of time for Griffin. Azarati is an okay scrummager. Coleman, no, he's a new guy there, so maybe not as strong there. Dewey Lake is in, which is fantastic news. I think Elias is injured, so we've got Belcher who starts for Cardiff, and Cardiff are playing okay at the moment, so plenty of Cardiff guys in here, and a new hooker as well that I haven't seen play. Second rows, Beard is back, which is great news. They really need him, especially Rowlands has retired. He was kind of dropping off anyway a bit, Rowlands, so I think they're going to need Beard to step up and be that big man, literally. There's a new second row in there, Fender, so let's see how he goes. Dafydd Jenkins is fit and firing for Exeter, so that's good news. So not bad in the second row. Back row, Faletau, of course, is always there. Will this guy ever retire? Probably not. Will his standards ever drop? Probably not. Man's in there. I was expecting maybe Moriarty. I thought he would have been perfect for a South Africa and New Zealand. So is that, missing a trick there? I'm not so sure. At least Morgan looks like he's good to go. I think he's got a bit of a niggle, but it sounds like he's good to go. And we finally see Morgan Morse, who's been knocking at the door for ages. He was amazing for the under-20s. He's been amazing for a while now. There's been calls for him to be selected. Now he is. I think he's ready. Can he burst onto the scene to be the next explosive number 8 for Wales? Plumtree's always very strong alongside Freddie Thomas. They're both big guys, as is Wainwright. So there's a bit of heft there in the back row. Hardy, Morgan Williams and Thomas Williams there are the three scrum halves. No massive surprise. Costello, like I said, missing out with the battle of the fly halves, and still pretty even between Edwards, Jared Evans and Callum Sheedy. So interesting to see how they go. I'll pick mine in a minute. Centre, very much up in the air. Is it the strongest centre lineup ever? No. Tompkins is back. Ben Thomas is a nice little player, but he's very little. Hawkins is a good all-rounder, maybe not quite as quick as I'd like him to be potentially. Beetham's a decent player as well. Hennessy is probably the potential in there. The young Bath lad is a really good outside centre. Similar build to Eddie James, who's injured at the moment. So maybe those two in the centres at one point could be interesting. Grady is injured as well. Another kind of phenomenal physique. Back three, we're expecting Adams, we're expecting Murray. The return of Rees-Zammit. Dyer back in is interesting. I wondered if they'd go for Bowen, the youngster from Cardiff, though not yet. Rogers has always been decent for Wales when he's played. So it's an okay squad. I think it's as good as it could be. They're going to have to play, really well, maybe even above themselves to win a lot of games, although they've got their tough games towards the end, the harder games. New Zealand, South Africa, starting with Argentina, which is obviously going to be incredibly tough, but at home, new coach Bouts, maybe they can get that win. They should win against Japan. They were 1-1 in Japan, now at home. Now with this new coach Bouts, if you like, maybe they will win that anyway fairly easily, dare I say. So I think it could even be possible to go 2 from 2 at the beginning. Certainly they need to win that Japan one, at least 1 from 2, and then anything from New Zealand and South Africa I think is a bonus, as long as they're competitive and not humiliated. 1 from 2, okay. 2 from 2 would be absolutely fine and give them something to build on for the Six Nations. Let me know what you think. No, it's all a little bit positive at the moment from me, but when it starts off and maybe they start losing against Argentina, things could go downhill. So it's a big moment here. They want to get back on the horse, if you like, get some wins. Of course, they'll want to pack out the Principality Stadium for every match, get a stack of money, because God knows Welsh rugby needs it at the moment. So let's see. It's up in the air at the moment. I'm fairly optimistic. I don't think it's a world-class squad, but certainly there is some promise there. Carry in, re-Sam it in, big positive. So straight in, this is how I'd go with my best Welsh 23. I think that front row of Smith, Lake and Griffin makes sense to me. Griffin's still a youngster, but I think you've got to work with him. I think he's the best talent there. On the bench, the reliable Belcher of Cardiff. Carry straight in there with some big impact, and Azarati is a solid scrummager. Never been overly enthused, but I think he's decent enough. Second row, definitely Jenkins and Beard. I think Jenkins is getting better and better. He was thrown in to that Welsh team probably too early because they needed him, but he's actually playing better rugby now. Physically, he's stronger, he's fit now, he's had some injuries, and Beard, they need him to step up. Now, big time on the bench, I think Freddie Thomas can cover second row and 6, and that'll be very useful, allowing Morgan Morse to come off the bench. I think that extra dynamism, they're going to need something off the bench a bit special. Very solid back row, Wainwright, Morgan, Falatau. I think that's their best one. Plenty of carrying line out, jackling over the ball, a bit of everything. Obviously, Thomas Williams still playing his best rugby, and I would go with Sheedy. I wouldn't go with Edwards. I know he played well in Japan, but I think Sheedy's very reliable. He's on form, and I think he gets the nod, but you could go either way. Now, centres I'm really not sure about. I think Ben Thomas, like I said, is just too small for international centre. Llewellyn, I've watched a lot for Gloucester. He's a big lad, but can get caught out in defence. Tompkins, best rugby, I think, is just about behind him. Hennessy's too young, so that leaves me with Hawkins and Beetham. So I'd probably go with that. Hawkins gives you that ball playing, that kicking, and a bit of size as well. And I think Beetham's probably the best option at 13 at the moment, but not the strongest area there. Back three, of course, we have Lewis Rees-Zammit starting. Rogers has never put a foot wrong for Wales, and Murray is very exciting, very explosive. Yes, he is quite a lot smaller, so something they may target Wales at other teams is, of course, the high ball. And then rounding out on the bench with Hardy, Dan Edwards and Ben Thomas covering pretty much everywhere. So that's what I think the best 23 is. They're going to have to play really well to get those wins. Japan, definitely they need to win. Maybe Argentina, and could they get something from any of the other two, or at least get some pride, stay competitive in those 2 games against New Zealand and South Africa. Then let's go on to Ireland, and not too many surprises here. There are some new faces, there are some injuries as well. Big Joe McCarthy, massive miss. His brother's in though, Paddy McCarthy, so we'll see him at Loosehead. Now they need to build some depth under Porter. Now, of course, Healy's no longer there, so Boyle and Paddy McCarthy, they need some game time. Porter's going to be starting. Hookers are sorted, of course. Sheehan, one of the best in the world. Kelleher, an able replacement. And Gus McCarthy, the apprentice. That works. Beelum and Furlong, they've been there for ages. Clarkson coming up. Again, that works quite well. With the big man out in the second row, Ahern maybe has benefited from that. He's been close to an Ireland squad. Many called for him. The Munster man is in. Is he the next big thing in the second row? Byrne there, who can play 6 as well, but looks like he'll be more of a second row in this squad. Ryan and Henderson, very experienced. Baird, we know, can play second row and back row. Conan, I think, maybe carrying a little injury, but looks like he's okay. Great news that Doris is back from his Lions injury, or his pre-Lions injury, so that's fantastic. Prendergast has been the up-and-coming guy for a while. Can he make a breakthrough? Timoney as well, who's going to kind of inherit that Van der Fleer number 7 role if he ever retires, but Van der Fleer, the ever-present there. And with Murray gone, it stays with Blade, Casey and Gibson Park. Big tournament, I think, for Casey. Can he come out from the shadows and be the heir apparent for Gibson Park? I think so. He's ready now. The fly half question is fascinating. Crowley got the best of it in their recent encounter with Leinster, Munster-Leinster. Crowley looked the best, but Prendergast plays a good system, obviously plays with Gibson Park at club level. For all he can play 10, but also 15, but it's a straight shootout between Crowley and Prendergast. Plenty of options in the centres. We see Tom Farrell come into it. McCloskey we've seen a lot of. He definitely has stepped up as a big man. I think Henshaw's got a bit of a niggle. Aki has, but let's assume they're all going to be fit. In the back three, I would actually have Osborne as a centre. I think that's going to be his best position going forward, but there's no Keenan, so I'm pretty sure he will be a back three, probably a 15. Lowe still in there. Has he still got it? Let's see. Jimmy O'Brien and Tommy O'Brien, the two O'Briens, and Stockdale. Very interesting to see what the back three will be. And another blow that Mac Hansen isn't there, so there definitely are some injuries for Ireland, not quite as strong as they could be. This is the team I would go for. Porter, and Furlong, of course, backed up by Kelleher, Boyle and Beelum. I think that's fairly straightforward. With Joe McCarthy out, Byrne and Ryan starting makes an awful lot of sense. And the go-to back row, Doris, Van der Fleer, Conan. I can't see past that unless you want to put Byrne at 6 and maybe Doris at 8 if Conan's injured. But saying they're all fit, I would go with that pack. It's very, very settled, very experienced, and Ireland capable of playing some of the best rugby I've ever seen. Just can they get going straight away in Chicago against the All Blacks? Such a big ask to get going straight away there. Crowley, I think, has to have number 10 shirt. I think he's physically a lot stronger. He's in good form. Just because Prendergast plays with Gibson Park, I don't think is enough to make him start, but he's on the bench anyway. The best centres, probably Aki Ringrose, maybe Henshaw Ringrose still. It's always going to be like that. Low on one wing, of course. Osborne at 15 is the obvious choice, and Jimmy O'Brien would make the other wing for me. And then maybe a combination of either Baird or Ahern or Baird and Timoney on the bench. That's the one I can't quite work out. Let me know what you would do. Definitely Casey covering scrum half, and Henshaw can round out covering a lot of positions as well at number 23. So that's my take on the squads. Those are my best 23s. Let me know what yours would be down below. If you like these sorts of videos, do like, do subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you next time.